You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hello and welcome to Force 13 live coverage on a dual code red situation on either side of the planet right now. Typhoon Nanmadol making landfall earlier as a category 2 in southern Kyushu in Japan. Our team have downgraded it further down to a category 1 with 90 mile per hour winds, and I think it was a pressure of 945. Very discrepant wind pressure relationship due to the landfall interaction and how it was earlier too. And of course we have Tropical Storm Fiona, which is headed towards Puerto Rico and is just shy of hurricane status at 70 miles per hour. We're going to cover both of these as much as possible, although in the first hour or two, assuming that we go on for a few hours today, Nanmadol will get a bit of priority because of time zones. My name is Nathan Foy in the studio, and for this hour of coverage I am joined by Joey and Jose with their take on what we're seeing right now. And I know that I've only been back here for a couple of days since my little break away, so I wonder what, Joey, your perspective of both of these storms is right now.
Yep, so obviously we have Typhoon Nanmadol just made landfall over Kagoshima, isn't it, I believe?
Yeah.
And we've been tracking it for the past couple of days. Obviously we saw it as quite a significant system as it was heading towards Kagoshima, thankfully a weekend before making its eventual landfall. But that doesn't take away from the impacts. Obviously it is currently nighttime in the area, so we can't necessarily see as much as what's going on the ground right now via webcams. I was trying to find one earlier, but they were all in darkness. But obviously a very concerning situation unfolding there. When it comes to Fiona, again, very concerning picture being painted for Puerto Rico and parts of the Dominican Republic, with heavy rainfall, landslides expected, strong winds as well, of which will probably be making their appearance on the islands very, very soon indeed.
Here's a live look at the radar and satellite imagery blend on Tropical Storm Fiona, and you can see that the inner core, I'm not sure if we can call it an eye wall yet, but the inner core is very close to reaching the southern coast of Puerto Rico, and you can see that very high rain rates are now sweeping across the eastern side of the island and over the US Virgin Islands as well, which can't be forgotten, those areas also being affected by this storm. Eventually it will head towards Dominican Republic too, but at the moment current movement appears to still be west-northwest as far as I can see, and that would take it towards a landfall near the western tip of Puerto Rico. Joey's also showing us a camera right now. Let me just see if we've configured everything here. It's been a bit of a rush to get to air today. Let's try and get this visible. There's our left bar that we're not using today because we didn't have time to update it. So here it is with Joey's screen showing us the view at Puerto Rico right now.
Yeah, so not completely sure where it is in Puerto Rico. It's clearly on the coast somewhere. Not sure which coast. But as you can see, as we were mentioning, strong winds making their way. Felt very heavy rain that's been going on for hours probably now. And you can see the waves starting to make their way in. I don't think we will be seeing much when it comes to storm surge with the system, considering the fact that it hasn't been, what's the word? It hasn't had the, I guess you could call it the time to really build up a storm surge before making its way over here. But regardless, we will be seeing quite damaging impacts to the island. Obviously, landslides due to the heavy rain and wind damage as well. And we've already been seeing impacts when it comes to power. Many areas of the country have already been seeing, or many areas of the island have already been seeing power outages as a result.
Yeah, I saw a graphical depiction of that. I don't know about numbers, but there's definitely reports of lots of power outages already. I'm trying to figure out as well with you where that webcam actually is, because that would be very helpful. I'm just trying to search it up here, and I still can't seem to find it, so... Obviously, Puerto Rico is it's not a huge island, so storm impacts will be felt across the whole area. And when you look at that webcam right now, you can see certainly breezy, windy at times, rain falling along the lens of the camera, and a little bit of wave action. Doesn't look too crazy, though, at this point.
The webcam is on the northeastern coast, on the far northeast coast of the island.
Right. So that's interesting, actually. That area could get some significant winds then. But when you say northeast, is it facing the north or is it facing the east?
It's facing the north. From what I can tell. Yeah.
So I'm still trying to find it on my map here, but I'm not having any luck. So it probably won't get the worst conditions there at that location, but it will be interesting to watch through to see exactly what happens. Back to our latest radar imagery. This is updating all the time, so we'll have regular check-ins with what our radar presentation is looking like. Some pretty decent returns there on the reflectivity, northeastern side, and just rain lashing the whole area there right now. Let's go to some more image. And that took a long time for the signal to come back there. I'm not sure what happened to that. Let's take another look then at Fiona right now, if we can. And this is the mesoscale rapid scan imagery, and you can see a massive blow up in convection recently in the last hour or two, where it's really started to blow up. Still at sea though, most of that convection, but rain lashing the eastern side of Puerto Rico all the same, and that outer band starting to reach the Dominican Republic as well. Let's check another view. Here is the geocolor or true color imagery. True color actually. Let's try and get that a little bit further. So once again you can see in very sharp images there the blow up of that convective top. You reckon that's a sign of strengthening, Joey?
What are we looking at? I was finding a webcam on the southern coast just then.
Well, Fiona's really blowing up with its convective tops right now.
Yeah, was looking earlier at it. I haven't had much of a chance to look. I was looking at it yesterday before I went to bed. Haven't had a chance to look at it when I woke up today. But it does seem as though the storm may be trying to strengthen some. I do believe we have recon in the system
I was just
at
going to
this moment.
mention them, yes. I don't have any information regarding that. Usually someone else picks
Yeah.
up the recon data. I know that from what I was hearing earlier that their recon data supports the 70 miles per hour that the National Hurricane Center are currently running with, and no higher at the moment from what I heard.
Yes, that does seem like it's yeah.
So it is just short of hurricane strength, Fiona, and is likely to reach hurricane strength fairly soon. Let's take a look at the National Hurricane Center's cone. Well, it's the one in the corner there. Let's blow that up. And here is a large picture, as we'd want it to be, of the cone. And just to reiterate some of those warnings right now, a hurricane warning for, of course, Puerto Rico, including Vieques and Culebra, and the coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Casedo to Cabo Frances Viejo. A hurricane watch for the US Virgin Islands still in effect, and for the north coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Frances Viejo westward to Puerto Plata, which is on the sort of northern extremity of the country. A tropical storm warning for the US and British Virgin Islands, and for once again the north coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Frances Viejo to Puerto Plata, and a tropical storm watch for the south coast of the Dominican Republic from west of Cabo Casedo to Barahona, the Turks and Caicos Islands, southeastern Bahamas, including the Acklins, Crooked Island, Long Key, the Inaguas, Mayaguana, and the Ragged Islands. And you can see all of those warnings depicted on the map. You'll also notice towards the end of that 5-day period that a hurricane dot is perched just on the just next to Bermuda by Friday, so that's another area that might have to watch out for this storm later on. It will pile through these Greater Antilles in the course of the next 24 to 36 hours. It will start to clear Puerto Rico by late tonight, and then it will head off more northwesterly. Still won't turn due north until it passes Turks and Caicos, according to that National Hurricane Center cone. And on their forecast, they are expecting a peak of 95 knots at this moment, which is just short of Category 3 status, and that's at the end of the cone. But it will be Category 1 all the time it moves through Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, according to their forecast. Just to remind you, it is not a hurricane yet. It is nearly a hurricane at 70 miles per hour winds, and it currently contains gusts of... in fact, it doesn't say. Usually it says gusts. I imagine gusts will probably be up to about 85 or 90 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And just some news, a weather station at Yabucoa El Negro in Puerto Rico recently reported a sustained wind of 45 miles per hour and a gust to 54. That's a land observation that was recently reported. Now, it's not just the wind that we're concerned about. In the case of both these storms right now, we are concerned very much about rainfall too. When you look at Fiona over Puerto Rico, we could be looking at isolated maximums of 25 inches in the eastern part of Puerto Rico. That is well over 500 millimeters of rain. 25 inches. The threat for flash flooding and landslides and more prolonged flooding is massive, isn't it? Don't know if any of you wanted to elucidate on that.
Yeah, the National Hurricane Center, specifically in their advisories, warned that landslides is one of the main risks with Fiona. The amount of rainfall that we could see in a very short period of time over these islands here, mainly Puerto Rico itself, is astonishing. Some significant flooding and landslides expected, and that could be a real problem and just exacerbating all of the other impacts.
We're going to try and get these up on a split screen if we can. I know that's a little bit finicky. Let's try and get somewhere. This is a round image, by the way, if that wasn't clear. Let's try and get both of them. Oh dear, that one's just been squished. Okay, never mind. I'm going to try and crop some of this so that we can see more of it. Just so that we can show both the storms at the same time, because I appreciate that there is going to be a very high amount of interest for both storms, and I really don't want any area feeling left out. That is terribly stretched. There we go, back to normal. So on our left is Nanmadol, on our right is Fiona. We'll get some text up there as well, and we'll try and keep that consistent. So two major events that are currently ongoing right now, and they are presented in front of us. Typhoon Nanmadol and Tropical Storm Fiona. I'm just sorting all of this out. If you've got any questions for us whilst we're on the air today, please send your messages in, and we'll be able to take comments and questions on all of the current activity and try and assist with any questions. I'm sure there's been plenty so far, so let's take a look and see what we've got whilst we look at both of these live. Let's see. So there was a question actually about our latest tropical weather outlook, Joey. They depict a subtropical storm in the Central Pacific. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they did do that. And we have been looking at that for the past couple of days, and there was something that was spinning up. I didn't pay much attention to it simply because we have these two other systems in currently meandering about. So I was paying a bit more attention to those than the Central Pacific right now.
Well,
so I don't have too much information, Nathan.
I was actually going to agree at first, but then I saw the wind field, and we didn't get full passes from ASCAP, but it looked like the wind field was too loose. So I personally have not gone along with that. It might have happened, and it certainly had chance, and it certainly would have been warm core.
Yes.
So it was certainly a curious feature. It's going to be one that might have fierce debate, especially for Hone fans. Anyway, another question. Is it possible for Tropical Storm Fiona to have tornado rotation? I'm sure tornadoes are quite possible in this storm right now.
Yeah, definitely, especially as the system moves through the island on its northern edge, especially, and in those outer rain bands, parts of the northern islands, parts of the northern islands, parts of the north of the island are probably receiving at this moment in time. I don't have radar with me. Actually, I could get some radar. That would be very helpful.
Yep, sure. Let's get some more questions too. Do we think that Nanmadol was a Category 5? I think it's quite conclusive.
Yes.
And how fast is Fiona moving? I can tell you the current movement according to the NHC is west-northwest at 8 miles per hour. Let me just check one of the Navy sources, real time. They're suggesting that the movement is actually maybe more westerly at 7 miles per hour. So quite similar, but possibly a significant difference there regarding Fiona's movement. And obviously, when you look at it, it is very close to Puerto Rico. Let's go back to Fiona imagery with that latest radar. And already, since we started the stream, there's been some changes there in that radar presentation. It's arcing out really much better there after that hook was first established, and it is looking more and more like a complete hurricane package here, Joey. I'm not sure if you agree, or Jose. Any thoughts?
Yes, I would agree with you there actually. However, I'm not sure whether that's a radar issue, but towards the southern side, it doesn't look closed at that moment. I think that's just radar not being able to pick that up, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's see if we can cut to velocities and see if we can spot anything that might suggest something along the lines of tornadic activity. I'm looking at it right now. Let's get a proper zoom in on that. And as far as I can see, I can't really see anything there that would depict anything like a tornadic rotation, just for those who were wondering. Well, at least at this moment in time. They can happen very quickly and they can happen unexpectedly. So be on the lookout.
If I was to guess, based on its motion, it looks as though we could see a landfall from the system, possibly just west of Ponce on the island, or on the city of Ponce, possibly.
No, I don't agree. I think it's going to go further west. Current movement probably suggests a clip to the very southwestern tip, if it were me. I've just depicted what I think might happen on the map. That's what I'm seeing at the moment, but hard to tell. Very hard to tell.
What's this warning here?
You've got a warning?
Yeah, a flash flood warning just popped up on my radar.
Just want to point out the warnings that are in effect for Nanmadol as well. Of course, we're covering both systems at the same time, which is a feat in itself, and very headache-inducing for us here. There are emergency warnings for the typhoon for the whole of Kagoshima Prefecture in southern Japan, and there are typhoon warnings for the rest of Kyushu, the entire island, one of the 4 main islands of Japan, and extending over large areas, almost all of Shikoku, and 3 prefectures in Honshu, Yamaguchi, Shimane, and Hiroshima. And you can see the progress of Nanmadol on your left hand side. Its eye capitulated long ago. It's now, I mean, it is huge, and it has weakened a lot, but it still has a very low pressure, still a massive potential for rainfall. We're talking about 25 inches in Puerto Rico. Well, we're talking about around 20 inches for Kyushu as well. That's 500 millimeters. I imagine a lot of that has already fallen. I think we're expecting a further 10 inches now, which is still 250 millimeters for that region. I think we're going to be seeing very substantial damages, but it is a little saving grace that the storm weakened so substantially before it made landfall, because we were looking at a 1 in 30 year event, and the weakening has brought it down to maybe a 1 in a 5 year event, which is still quite significant, of course, but it could have been much worse in my view. But we still don't even know what we're dealing with yet. We don't really know what's happened on the ground so far. I've not been privy to any communications or any of that stuff. I know that someone in our chat was saying that they were from Fukuoka on the northern side of Kyushu, furthest from the storm, and they're not seeing very much yet. So if you are on the ground in either of these 2 storms right now, and it's safe to do so, please let us know what you're currently experiencing. Any observations, any local news that you can bring to us that you have eyes on that we might not. It would be probably very helpful for us. Let's check some more comments, and there's plenty coming in. Does Fiona have a chance of making landfall in Newfoundland? I don't think so, and if it's probably going to get close, it probably won't be tropical by then. It will have turned post-tropical by then. And another comment, what is Fiona's forecasted peak intensity? National Hurricane Center currently going category 2. I think they're if they had a cone for intensity, I think it would be quite a wide cone as well. It certainly could go higher than that. And will Fiona have a chance of making landfall in Bermuda? Absolutely. When you look back at the National Hurricane Center's cone, let me try and find that again. We're trying to deal with so many different pictures. Here we go with the NHC cone. There it is, you can see all of it now. And they are expecting, just at that last hurricane point there, very, very close to the island of Bermuda in the early hours of Friday morning. Whilst we're here, look at the other graphic. This is the key messages, and we may as well read this out. Hurricane conditions expected across portions of Puerto Rico today and expected in portions of the Dominican Republic tonight and Monday. Tropical storm conditions occurring across the US and British Virgin Islands and are spreading westward across Puerto Rico. Tropical storm conditions will reach the Dominican Republic later today and tonight. Heavy rains from Fiona will continue across Puerto Rico through tonight and occur over the Dominican Republic later today into Monday. These rainfall amounts will produce life-threatening flash floods and urban flooding across Puerto Rico and portions of the eastern Dominican Republic, along with mudslides and landslides in areas of higher terrain. You can see the rain chart there on the bottom right-hand side. Fiona is forecast to strengthen after moving away from Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. Tropical storm conditions possible in the Turks and Caicos Islands and the southeastern Bahamas by late Monday or early Tuesday. And that's why they currently have a tropical storm watch. Back to the two sides of imagery that we've got there. Nanmadol and Fiona, both active at the same time, both code red storms. Nanmadol previously a category 5, making landfall in Kyushu as a category 2, now down to category 1 according to our team of analysts. On the right, Tropical Storm Fiona, just shy of hurricane strength, really blowing up with convection near the center and looking more circular in terms of its radar eye, and I reckon it's well on its way to becoming a hurricane shortly. Joey over there showing us a webcam from Wyndham Grand, which I believe is on the northeastern side of the island. Not too much changing there. Visibility is down. They're getting quite a few bands of moderate showers and breezes and some stronger winds in there as well. They're probably getting maybe 20 to 30 mile per hour winds. And the waves there don't look really significant, but we believe this is on the north side looking north, so we think that it's not as severe where this camera is compared to some other locations. Let's see if we can take a look at some individual shots again, and I'm going to try and hope this works. There is a look once again at the rapid scan on Fiona, with convection bubbling up, reaching into the minus 70s now, pretty much over the what might be an eye. Those black areas showing the colder cloud tops. Colder cloud tops mean higher clouds. That usually means more precipitation inside the storm, more energy, and therefore potentially more strength, and a sign of intensification. Cloud tops aren't the be-all and end-all of all tropical cyclones and intensity guessing, but it can formulate a large part of getting our estimates. Of course, their validity surrenders to recon data, which they've been in recently. Are they still in there? I'm not sure. But they recently corroborated an estimate of 70 miles per hour. And of course, even better than recon observations are the actual ground observations, because recon is still slightly inferred. It's the ground observations that give the most accurate information. So I've seen one or two comments, Joey, that about a quarter of a million power outages now.
Oh, let me check that really quick.
Or at any rate, a quarter of a million people out of power in Puerto Rico.
Let me check.
Whilst we do that, let's look back at some imagery once again of Nanmadol, and there's its progress becoming slightly weaker as it progresses just northeasterly, it would appear, over southern Kyushu.
Yes, it is about a quarter of a million out of power currently.
Quite a lot. And it's shoveling itself northeastwards there through Kyushu. That 250,000, by the way, out of power in Puerto Rico. Two situations ongoing: Typhoon Nanmadol and Tropical Storm Fiona. Fiona might be on the verge of becoming our next hurricane, and Nanmadol slowly weakening but producing potentially very destructive conditions over southern Japan. You're watching Force 13 live, our coverage on both of these storms right now, and we'll be here for a while. I'm not really sure how we're going to schedule our coverage today, but we'll muddle through it. And the National Hurricane Centre's next update comes up in an hour and a half, or a little less than that now. So we'll be waiting on for that as well. Now then, a question we've received there is, what would our explanation be that Typhoon Nanmadol was a Category 5? I'm not fully versed with it, as I was away when it happened. I did briefly check satellite imagery, and it would suggest that it may have been a Category 5. I'm not fully certain at this point, but our team were, and I don't know if you were part of that discussion, Joey, or at least you saw the outcome. What was their reasoning, do you know?
I could quickly check, but I wasn't part of it much. I'm not one of the cyclone analyst members, but if I scroll up just a bit here, where did they go? Category 5, right here. So, reasoning wasn't actually published with the fix itself. All I know is that we went 140 knots, 910 millibars at 18Z on the 16th of September. But if I quickly...
Alright. We'll get back to you on that. Let's see if we've got something else. There was a comment there suggesting that Recon found an extrapolated pressure of 985.
Jose?
Uh, nothing. I'm
Oh, okay.
a little shocked, but
Ah, I don't know. I've not been able to clarify that myself. And how big is Fiona, and what is Fiona's core temperature? Well, let's go back to the imagery showing the radar, and here it is, looking even better there on this latest imagery. As the convection blows up, the radar presentation improves. It's getting more circular, and it looks like it is about to form an eye. And that is a telltale sign that we're about to see another hurricane, and potentially a hurricane landfall in Puerto Rico. I was thinking earlier it was reminding me a little bit of Irene in 2011, but Irene was a little bit later than this storm in getting to hurricane status, assuming that this does it before landfall. Looking at this imagery, I think it will very, very soon. But regarding its size, that's what we were talking about. It is quite large. Its influence from north to south in terms of heavy cloud cover is about 500 miles. And its influence from, that's north to south, and east to west, it's about 850 miles. 550 miles. So it is quite substantial. Let's see if we can find an equivalent distance. I mean, it's almost the full length of Cuba for perspective. So it is a fairly large storm. Certainly for a tropical storm and not a significant hurricane. Quite a large size. Checking in on that radar right now, and you can see that some of the reds are about to reach the southern coast of Puerto Rico, so things are going to get a little bit gnarly there shortly. Quite a few oranges sweeping through the central part of the island as well, and a few other areas reaching Vieques and towards the southeastern coast. Jose, what did you want to tell us?
technically I was gonna say something, but I forgot. Well, but actually, it looks pretty. Has it? I don't know if you're looking at the screen on the windy satellite. It looks like almost Puerto Rico's about to enter the eye wall almost.
And it is becoming a little bit of an eye wall. It's not quite there yet, maybe, but, well, it's hard to tell. But certainly the inner core of the storm looking very decent on that imagery, and indeed the one that we've been showing as well. We'll get the very latest frames as they come in here on Force 13 Live. If you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air right now, send them in. You can start your message with Force 13 and it will tag us in the comments, and then we can facilitate your input. It delivers a lot of rain to the whole area, so that could be what it's hinting at, but I have not seen the run myself, so I'm not sure. Joey, what are we looking at?
Webcam in Kagoshima. I decided, since I couldn't find any others for Fiona, I went on a hunt for some in the area that Typhoon Nanmadol is affecting. So this one, as you can see, I'm not sure what's going on with it, because when the raindrops go in front of the camera, it leaves some sort of afterglow. But as you can see, it's clearly raining. Not much in the way of wind on this camera.
No, it looks super calm.
Yeah, so I could try and find the exact location to see whether they are in or close to the center of the storm, and that may be why it is sort of calm. Give me a moment here.
Anywhere in Kagoshima shouldn't be in the center anymore, I don't think. Let me have a look again. Let's take another view at Nanmadol. Here it is, and it would appear to me that it might still just about be overcast, but we're well inland. So I'm not sure about that camera, but an interesting observation at least.
If we looked at this camera, just a couple of hours ago, we
Okay.
would be able to see the fact that I could try and get it up here, but it would probably have this area in the eye wall of the typhoon if you look at it on Google Maps.
Can we
One
scroll
moment.
back? Okay, looks worse there.
Right, let's see
If it plays.
if it loads. Oh,
Rain's a bit heavier, but it's still not that windy.
let's
This
see
was
if this
earlier
loads.
on with a bit of daylight. Well, it's on the coast then. There's the water there.
Yeah. It is a bit windier.
I have no idea where that could be. It could even be, it's still Kagoshima, it could even be on one of the islands offshore.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That that's where it's on the far southern tip of the island.
Very quiet at least.
Yeah.
And go back to the current image. And there's the current image. Doesn't look much different, really. So
Yeah.
that's one of the views in, we believe, southern Kagoshima right now. An area that likely saw a big chunk of the storm and is still seeing it right now. Let's go back to our split screen. We are covering 2 storms at the same time today. Not an unprecedented thing, but it is a complicated thing when we have to deal with 2 major impacts at the same time. Code reds. Nanmadol on our left hand panel moving through Kyushu, still a high-end category 1 after a category 2 landfall, and more notably a pressure reading still around 945 millibars. And Tropical Storm Fiona on its way up, likely to become a hurricane shortly. The National Hurricane Center will update us in about an hour. Let's check back in with the radar on Fiona as the center of circulation, soon to be an eye, I reckon, becomes more circular and pronounced. Let's just get a real close-up on Puerto Rico right now to see if we can help you out with some rain information too. So, live look at some of those areas there. The reds and the oranges generally just lingering offshore from the inner core. But overland we are getting a lot of rain. A pulse of yellows to oranges moving over from east to the central part of Puerto Rico. The western area has been not too bad up until now, but they'll start to get much worse conditions in the next hour. Further east, let's see if we can take a look towards Vieques, which is receiving a few areas there of bands, and the Virgin Islands there as well are visible. It's like a significant little storm there for the US Virgin Islands. Let's go back to the velocity and see just again whether there's anything that might have some kind of tornadic signature or anything to that effect. And maybe there's 1 or 2 little things near the Virgin Islands that might be suggestive. Nothing obvious, but just a few little things that are showing up weak signatures. But in general, we're not seeing a huge amount. Let's see if we can get some returns on those winds. Now these will be winds at altitude, and to be honest, when we look at velocities here, we're not getting, well, Yeah, we're getting about 50 to 55 mile an hour winds along the southern coast of Federico and north, actually, all through that area, 50s. But the eastern side, which is closest to the radar, getting a few 50s as well. So that could be nearly 50 miles per hour sustained winds on the ground. Let's see where the highest values might be. Not seeing anything major, actually, even up to higher levels on that radar return. Highest I'm seeing is 60 miles per hour. That's at altitude, which is interesting. Of course, Recon getting information that supports 70 miles per hour on their latest pass. And there we are, back to the latest radar screen. Possibly getting stronger in the northern side, maybe. Let's see if we have any more comments just now. A Moment of Lovely sending us a show of support there, and thank you very much for being with us. And apparently people saying that Recon found winds of over 75 knots. I'm not sure about that. Even if at flight level, I'm not sure. Sounds a bit high. What is the reason all the recent storms are passing by near or over Japan and Korea? I mean, usually steering patterns get set up and you tend to see in a year the same pattern repeating itself quite a lot. I'm not quite sure what it is with this. I've not fully researched it. I imagine it must be to do with high pressure weakness to the northwest. It's usually the case, but don't quote me on that, but I imagine that is probably one of the main reasons. And I've just shut down my window. That's very helpful. More comments. Will Fiona become a major hurricane? ? I think it's certainly got the opportunity to. It won't do it whilst it's near land, but I think it has a significant chance of reaching major hurricane status when it moves out over the western Atlantic, and could give Bermuda a close call as well. Another question, is Fiona going to hit Louisiana in the future? Nowhere near, no threat to any of the Gulf Coast from Fiona. I know that when you look at it, it might give you shades of Laura in its early stages when it was bypassing all these islands, but it's definitely moving or going to move northwards, and it is still moving close to westwards, which is interesting, but there is no way that it will continue to move west all the way towards the Gulf. I mean, National Hurricane Center forecasters, they can still make mistakes, but long gone are the days where they would end up making mistakes of that magnitude like they might have done 50 or 60 years ago. Any comments from our team right now? Oh, well, they seem quite content. Looking at the full cone there of Fiona once again, just to remind you, all those red areas, that's the hurricane warning zone. So Puerto Rico and a big chunk of the Dominican Republic in a hurricane warning, even though Fiona is not yet a hurricane. If we hear any news suggesting that it has reached hurricane status, I'm sure we'll be on top of it quickly. And we have a big team in the background who are always looking out for that information, and I imagine they'll break in to our messages and tell us that the evidence supports a hurricane, but not at this juncture. It is 70 miles per hour sustained winds, which is just short of hurricane status, so it's close enough. And Typhoon Nanmadol, a category 1, weakening but still very powerful and dangerous as it sweeps through Kyushu. All right. Yes.
Okay then. So it does look as though there was a reading of 79 knot flight level winds from Recon. To whoever said
Right.
that earlier on. And it does seem as though they might need to use a drop sonde in that area to get an actual accurate reading. But it is true, they did pick that up.
Ah, so they're still buzzing around the storm right now?
Yeah, they're still in there.
And when do you think they might be able to make that drop sonde?
I'd say it's probably quite close at this moment, probably right on the cusp of hurricane status.
So we'll get that news whenever we can, or whenever it becomes available. We continue to monitor this radar imagery, and it is trying to fully wrap around. I mean, if you look back to how this stream started nearly an hour ago, it had half of an eye wall, but now it's developed almost a full one. I still hesitate to call it an eye wall because I don't really think it's a solid wall in what people might associate with a strong hurricane. It's a much more flimsy thing. I mean, when you look towards the western side, it's still only in the greens, but it's really significant that the banding is now just about to enclose on the eastern side, and lo and behold, you've got an eye. So that is nearly complete, and I would say with that, Joey, once that seals off, I would be pretty happy to call that a hurricane.
Yeah.
Just continuing to look at that imagery right there. Let's give a quick mention to a storm that we're really not going to talk about today, but one that does exist and we've got to acknowledge it, and that is Tropical Storm Madeline, which is in the Eastern Pacific on the very left hand side of your screen, and you can see Fiona in the shot as well, of course. So that one is also active. That's moving out in the Eastern Pacific. Still a weak tropical storm, and will shift towards the west-northwest eventually and out to sea into the Eastern Pacific Ocean. There's also another disturbance down there near Guatemala that could develop into our next tropical storm for the Eastern Pacific. The next name on the list is Newton, and obviously you can still see Fiona there on the right hand side, which is looking like it's going to become a substantial storm. I'm surprised no one's compared it to Dorian yet in our comments, but trust me, that is never going to happen. The setup's completely different this time around, and it will be headed recurving quite normally towards the north. So a recap on both of these systems right now. We have a double code red in effect for Typhoon Nanmadol, which made a potentially devastating landfall in southern Kyushu not so long ago as a Category 2 storm, and has now weakened to a Category 1, but is still very powerful, moving inland and delivering huge amounts of rain over the area. And on the right hand side, Tropical Storm Fiona, which looks to me as though it's going to become a hurricane shortly, just south of Puerto Rico. Give you a very quick distance estimate if I can. And we would suggest that it is about 85, a maximum of 85 kilometers offshore Puerto Rico. I think it actually might be closer. think it could be about 70 kilometers actually. It's quite close to land.
I have on the zoomed out 41 miles from land.
41 miles.
Yep.
So it might be that low. That's around 65 kilometers. I've seen a few different numbers bandied about. It is getting quite close to land. The main part of the northern, what might be an eye wall or at least core, is now about to impact southern Puerto Rico, and we'll be here to cover it in our next hour of coverage. We're taking a short break here. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Live coverage will continue in a moment. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Welcome back, this is Force 13 Live and we're looking at a double code red situation. Extremely dangerous storms. Typhoon Nanmadol, which is sweeping through southern Japan at this increasingly late hour in Japan. And Tropical Storm Fiona, which is affecting Puerto Rico and is on the cusp of reaching hurricane status. The National Hurricane Center will update at the end of this hour, and whatever their update goes with, you'll hear about it first right here when they put it out there. Fiona currently 70 miles per hour and a pressure of 991 millibars, which puts it just short of hurricane strength. My name is Nathan Foy here in the studio, and you can see everything that's going on. That left bar shouldn't be there because that's old, but never mind. You won't need to see me again. So here are the two storms right in front of us. We have hurricane warnings that are currently in effect and typhoon warnings for large parts of Japan. Let's get to those warnings first before we go any further. A hurricane warning right now in effect for Puerto Rico, including Vieques and Culebra, and the coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Cocedo to Cabo Francis Viejo. Hurricane watch for the US Virgin Islands and the north coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Francis Viejo westward to Puerto Plata. And a tropical storm watch is in effect for the US and British Virgin Islands, the north coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Francis Viejo westward to Puerto Plata. A tropical storm watch for the south coast of the Dominican Republic west of Cabo Cocedo to Barahona, the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the southeastern Bahamas. Hurricane conditions could start occurring along the south and western part of Puerto Rico in the next 5 hours. Let's go back to the imagery of Nanmadol now and its current warnings. There are still emergency typhoon warnings in effect for the entirety of Kagoshima Prefecture, and I'm just waiting for all of the other information to come up. In the meantime, there's some satellite imagery of Nanmadol's progress there, moving north-northeastwards and starting to lose its tightness by the looks of things there. I've just got the warnings now. Typhoon warning still in effect for the rest of Kyushu, for most of Shikoku, and for Yamaguchi, Shimane, and Hiroshima. There are gale advisories for Okinawa, northern Okinawa, the Amami Islands, and many other areas of Honshu, Tottori, Okayama, Hyogo, Kyoto, Fukui, Gifu, Aichi, Shizuoka, the western part, Mie, Nara, Wakayama, and Osaka. So lots of areas there under watches and warnings of various kinds. Also, big threats from both of these storms regarding rainfall and flooding and landslides. Kyushu could receive over 250 millimeters of rain. We could be seeing isolated amounts in Puerto Rico of 25 inches, which is well over 500 millimeters. You'll see rolling down the bottom of the screen every so often all of the gale chances and rain forecasts for various areas in the path of both of these storms. This hour I am joined by Jose, who is with us from, I think you're in Florida, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
So what do you think about what actually, before we go there, I don't think it's that new, but it is news that's reached us that Puerto Rico is now a state of emergency. I think we pretty much expected that. But your thoughts on Fiona right now?
Right now, for me, I'm thinking that, like, yes, it is going to strengthen to a hurricane, and this is I say, I'm not gonna compare it to Maria, but I'm not sure if it's actually bigger than Maria. But
No.
right now, yeah. Um, right now I'm like a little nervous for them because it's like I'm not. I think 5 years since Maria hit Puerto Rico, and they're still recovering from the damage. But since Fiona's going right now, we don't know how it's going to turn out.
I'm guessing, well, we've already seen wide-scale power outages so far. I guess that's a massive concern, but it must be down to flooding as well. That's going to be an extremely big problem for this area. It's a region that has the landscape which is very vulnerable to landslips and high rain rates which lead to flash flooding.
Yeah, what warnings right now?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the warnings are there right now. I will try and get hold of that immediately, but I imagine there will be all kinds of warnings currently going on there. I know we had a small dip in our stream there just now, but if you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're here, please let us know, and observations if you have any too. Right, let me tell you about flooding information for Puerto Rico. Right now we have a flood watch in effect for, it looks like, most of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, probably all of it, through Monday afternoon. So, excessive runoff may result in flooding of rivers, creeks, streams, and other low-lying and flood-prone locations. Rain bands from Tropical Storm Fiona continue to affect the islands. The main area of rainfall associated with the storm continues to affect the US Virgin Islands and has moved over eastern Puerto Rico. Periods of moderate to heavy rainfall are expected both as the system moves through the region as well as in the enhanced moisture that will persist over the area for several days. The heaviest rainfall is expected for today through Monday. Rainfall totals of 5 to 10 inches are expected for much of the region, including the US Virgin Islands, with locally higher amounts. In southern Puerto Rico, however, rainfall amounts of 12 to 16 inches are anticipated, and locally higher amounts to around 20 to 25 inches are possible. Now, when you look at the radar, take a look at this area now, getting a lot of red zones there in the southeastern part of Puerto Rico, and you can see this big area of red here as well, and that is likely to sweep all along here up towards the coast, and you'll see all of that area getting impacted with the reds fairly soon by the looks of things. So the rain event is well and truly underway as Fiona decides whether it's going to reach hurricane status or not. It's certainly completed that closing off of the eye, it would appear, although the western side's still looking very flimsy, so I'm not sure what to make of that. Although it is on the far side of the radar, so maybe that is something to consider too. I think Fiona is probably going to be declared a hurricane at the next advisory.
Yeah, speaking of that, it looks like it's running into some wind shear. Like,
Really?
uh, yeah, I'm pulling it up on the cyclone tracker. Uh, it's entering, it's right now it's entering some reds.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we're looking at, what's that, 25 to 30 knots of wind shear, which is interesting. But what about trying to figure out that? Oh, that doesn't have a shear tendency on it.
does it?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, wow.
I need to try and find the shear tendency map to see what's going on with that.
Alright, I'll be right back really fast.
Okay. I'm just looking at that map though and trying to figure out which way it's going. Yeah, it will be pushing against the storm quite a bit. And when you look at the satellite imagery once again, you look towards the southwestern side, it's a little bare, so it does leave itself a little bit open to wind shear from the southwest. We'll see, but I think it's fighting off any wind shear there. It doesn't look too significant. Alright, we've got quite a few comments and questions. Please start your message with Force 13 all in text and it will light up for us. There's a comment there. Will Force 13 US go live for today's severe weather event? We would like to. I don't know if we're able to because of our stretched resources, but we would certainly like to. And Forest Begonia wants to talk about the earthquake and why is there many 6 to 7 magnitude earthquakes this year? Doesn't it seem a little unusual? They come in flurries sometimes. They can be and they are impossible to predict, and waves of earthquakes are impossible to predict, but sometimes they can have one that leads to another with this chain reaction that goes on and on and on. But I'm not a big earthquake expert, so I can't really go any further than that. Another comment, do you think the East Pacific will run out of hurricane names before the season ends? And how fast will Tropical Storm Fiona move after hitting Puerto Rico? Well, as for the Eastern Pacific, no, it's not going to get anywhere near the end of the naming list. We're already in September. The Eastern Pacific shuts down much earlier, generally, than the Atlantic, mainly because late season storms in the subtropics never happen in the Eastern Pacific, where you still got a chance in the Atlantic. And the Atlantic has better oceanic heat content, has better sea surface temperatures. The Eastern Pacific gets very strangled towards the late part of the season. So when you're getting towards the end of September, you think maybe another 25% of the season's storms are still ahead of us, perhaps, in the Eastern Pacific, but we'll see. Do we see the 0Z Euro model yesterday for Fiona, where it takes it over southern Nova Scotia with a pressure in the 930s? Wow. Well, it is only one run, and as crazy as that seems, unless we see it more than once and a few runs in succession, then we're certainly not buying that. And a comment to show the latest JTWC cone on Nanmadol. Alright, let's get to that. So let's load this, and this should be the latest cone on Nanmadol. There it is. So the JTWC going with 95 knots at their latest forecast, which is 110 miles per hour, substantially higher than what our team have gone with, just on the western tip nearly of Kyushu, further west than I would call it as well, calling for very quick oh no, sorry, it's still, is that an old cone still? That is still an old cone. Let's try and find a new cone. There we go. So that just reminds you of what the old cone looked like. And now here we are at 80 knots. That's more like it. And taking it through towards the northeastern Kyushu down to 65 knots, and then scurrying through the rest of Japan, keeping tropical storm force winds for quite some time, a very large wind field as it moves through there. So when you look at those radials, the circular things there, the quadrants of wind field there, that's tropical storm force winds, which can cause damage. And you can see that almost the entirety of the main islands of Japan receive those winds. As a matter of fact, I would say apart from Hokkaido, all of Japan will get tropical storm force winds. That's a population of about 100 million or more, which will receive tropical storm force winds in the next few days, or certainly has a significant chance of doing. That is quite extraordinary. But right now, still a strong typhoon, 90 miles per hour, a pressure estimate of around 945 millibars, and it will curve eastwards very, very soon. Now, I think that's all for now. There was some more, I was going to go through some more flooding information, I think, as well. Just that, there's a coastal flood warning in effect in Puerto Rico until 6 a.m. on Monday. Coastal flooding associated with Tropical Storm Fiona for southern and southeastern coasts of Puerto Rico. Water levels of 1 to 3 feet above ground level, heavy surf and beach erosion. Flooding is occurring or imminent. Coastal residents in the warned area should be alert for rising water and take appropriate actions to protect life and property. And let's get the latest hurricane local statement for Puerto Rico as well. Just might have some interesting little bits that we can pick up on. So, nearing hurricane strength, torrential rains and mudslides expected across Puerto Rico. Just catching up, trying to get some of the important information. So, hurricane warning in effect for Puerto Rico as well as for the local waters. Hurricane conditions are likely for portions of Puerto Rico as well as for the local waters. For the US Virgin Islands, a tropical storm warning and a hurricane watch remains in effect. Maximum sustained winds are expected to be as high as near 75 miles per hour, with higher gusts of up to 95 miles per hour over Puerto Rico later today. The main hazard remains the flooding rainfall this storm will bring. Periods of moderate to heavy rainfall have been seen overnight and this morning. Rainfall totals in southern Puerto Rico are forecast to be 12 to 16 inches and locally up to 20 to 25. Elsewhere, rainfall amounts of 5 to 10 inches are expected with locally higher amounts. This amount of rainfall will result in life-threatening flash and urban flooding, as well as mudslides or rock falls and river flooding. The greatest threat for these dangerous flooding conditions is expected between tonight and Monday. Deteriorated hazardous marine and coastal conditions are also anticipated. Seas will build to around 18 feet, lasting through the weekend. Winds over the seas will be around 65 knots, with gusts to 80 knots. For the southern and southeastern coast, water levels of 1 to 3 feet above ground level are expected. Major rainfall flooding may prompt many evacuations and rescues. Rivers and tributaries will rapidly overflow their banks in multiple places. Small streams, creeks, canals, arroyos, and ditches may become dangerous rivers. In mountain areas, destructive runoff may run quickly down valleys whilst increasing susceptibility to rock slides and mudslides. Flood control systems and barriers may become stressed. Floodwaters can enter many structures within multiple communities, some structures becoming uninhabitable or washed away. Many places where floodwaters may cover escape routes. Streets and parking lots become rivers of moving water with underpasses submerged. Driving conditions become dangerous, many road and bridge closures with some weakened or washed out. Protect against life-threatening wind, having extensive impacts across Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. Potential impacts including considerable roof damage to sturdy buildings, with some having window, door and garage door failures leading to structural damage. Mobile homes severely damaged, with some destroyed. Damage accentuated by airborne projectiles, locations may be uninhabitable for weeks. Many large trees snapped or uprooted along with fences and roadway signs blown over, some roads impassable from large debris, and more within urban or heavily wooded places. Several bridges, causeways, and access routes impassable. Large areas with power and communications outages. Potential impacts from the main surge event are now unfolding across southern and southeastern Puerto Rico. Remain well away from locally hazardous surge having limited impacts. If realized, these impacts include localized inundation with storm surge flooding mainly across immediate shorelines and in low-lying spots, or in areas farther inland near where higher surge waters move ashore. Sections of near-shore roads and parking lots will become overspread with surge water, driving conditions dangerous in places where surge water covers the road. Moderate beach erosion, heavy surf also breaching dunes, mainly in usually vulnerable locations, strong rip currents, minor to locally moderate damage to marinas, docks, boardwalks and piers, a few small craft broken away from moorings. Potential for limited impacts from tornadoes across Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. Isolated tornadoes could hinder the execution of emergency plans during tropical events. A few places may experience tornado damage along with power and communications disruptions. Locations could realize roofs peeled off buildings, chimneys toppled, mobile homes pushed off foundations or overturned, etc. Do not return to evacuated areas until hazardous winds diminish and floodwaters abate. Now is the time to remain safely sheltered from the storm, stay inside and away from windows, listen to updates and be ready in case you lose electrical power, as many already have. Locate your battery-powered radio and flashlight from your emergency supplies kit. Keep these items close. During the peak of the storm, keep your shoes on and rain gear handy. Boots and tennis shoes offer the best foot protection if you become unexpectedly exposed to the elements. Continue to keep your cell phone well charged for as long as possible. If you lose power, use it more sparingly and mainly for personal emergencies and check-ins. Do not overload communication systems with idle chatter. And the big one, of course, do not venture outside whilst in the eye of the hurricane. Weather conditions may temporarily improve, which can be misleading. Once the eye passes, the wind will change direction and return to dangerous speeds. Lots of information there from the Puerto Rico office regarding this tropical storm, soon to be potentially a hurricane. When a National Hurricane Center update with their latest news, we'll be there to tell you what it is.
I thought it was already coming.
What's that?
But speaking of that, there's like 3 webcams right now on Puerto Rico right now in Wendy's. If you want to look at it.
Just trying to get it up here. Alright. Show us what you got.
I don't know if this is an hour, a minute ago, so I don't know if it's still good. Right now, really, I don't know how to use these kind of webcams, but
Well, that's a time lapse.
yeah. I really don't know how to use these.
Or it probably just takes a picture every hour or something.
Yeah. But this one, it looks a bit windy. Like, I think at 11. Hold up. I don't know how Daniel does it with his. But like at some point there was a bit of winds.
Yep, interesting stuff. Some big rain shafts there.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you saw, like, I think you saw it, did you? Hold up.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yep.
Right there. That's really, wow.
And looking at Joey's webcam there, still active in the northeastern part of Puerto Rico. Visibility appears to be improving a little bit there. But still very dull and rainy and windy. I think the winds might have gone up a bit.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the radar look at the storm right now, and once again you can see there its motion. Well, actually it doesn't appear to be moving very much at all in those latest radar frames. Now, I
So
wonder if
yeah,
that might be a little bit of a jog or a wobble or a spiral that might start or prompt more of a northwesterly turn, maybe.
I'm gonna look at the water vapor in chance for now. Looks like there's no Saharan dust around it. Well, a little bit in the Caribbean. I think northwestern and there's less Saharan dust right now. Like it's usually normal, right?
Some years have more than others.
Yeah. Looks like there's no Saharan dust affecting it right now. Wind shear, like you said, isn't bothering it. So the only way for this to weaken down, well, I don't want to say, if it crosses in the mountainous terrain in Hades.
Well, it's not really going there.
Yeah, it isn't anymore. Because, what is the height? I forgot. I think it's 1,000 feet, isn't it?
What is, sorry?
For the mountains in Hades. I think there's two or one mountains that are pretty high that any tropical storms that go through it, they weaken.
Oh yeah, on the Hispaniola they have some pretty tall mountains.
Yeah. It
Puerto
looks like
Rico, a little bit. It's just not enough of them, I suppose. Let's go back to the National Hurricane Center cone, and this is quite... I always like to look at it just before they do their next forecast, just so that we can remind ourselves what it currently looks like and what might change. So this was their last forecast from their intermediate advisory at 8 a.m. We're coming up to 11 a.m. now. And you can see they're expecting hurricane status before it reaches Puerto Rico. So in other words, very soon, within about 5 hours. But I think it could be much sooner than that. And then sweeping off northwestwards and then gradually turning northwards and recurving back out towards Bermuda and beyond. So those who are concerned about it moving further west and even thinking about the Gulf, it's really not going to happen. It's not going to be a Laura in that sense, that it's because Laura hobbled around this area as a tropical storm for a while. No, it is going much further north from here. To be honest, not many storms that pass through Puerto Rico turn that far north that quickly. I think of a few well-known examples like Marilyn and Emily.
Wasn't it part of it? Like it passes Puerto Rico, but then, well, oh wait, but then made a hard. I think not. I think a hard left, straight to the Bahamas.
Sorry, who did?
Dorian.
Dorian? Well, yes. But once again, a completely different situation to Dorian.
Yep. Looks like Bermuda is going to be affected.
Bermuda needs to watch this storm every step of the way, absolutely. As we look back at our dual panel once again of our double code red situation here with Typhoon Nanmadol and Tropical Storm Fiona, both extremely dangerous storms. Fiona knocking out power to well over 250,000 in Puerto Rico already. Nanmadol causing chaos over Kyushu in Japan with extremely high amounts of rain and very strong winds. I need to find out more information about what we're up to with our power outages. I'm just loading the information myself now. Okay, so information as of right now, 312,000 people without power in Puerto Rico now, which is quite a lot. The worst affected places are in sort of the central and eastern part, as you would expect. So that's where we're up to. 311,000 out of power.
Wow. Stunning. Stunning. I know for sure people in Puerto Rico worked so hard to get their power back after Maria, and I hope this one doesn't damage it really bad.
It is a concern, especially when you talk about those enormous rainfall potentials, as once again potentially up to 25 inches of rain. Just a moment.
This miles per hour, correct? I think it might change in the next advisory. Probably.
We've just received, about 20 minutes ago, a new flash flood warning in Puerto Rico. So, a flash flood warning for Benito County, Arroyo County, Calle County, Como County, Guayama County, Juana Diaz County, Ponce County, Salinas County, Santa Isabel County, and Villalba County in Puerto Rico until 2:15 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. Don't know what's happened to that radar there, but you can get to see a bit more of the visible. What's happened to that?
It's going very fast.
Try and
Did you
fix
change?
it. Well, there's another view of that radar and how that happened over the last few hours. Got so much better. Alright, let's try and get that better imagery again. There we go. Latest radar there. At 10:13 a.m., Doppler radar indicated thunderstorms producing heavy rain across the warned area. Between 1 and 2 inches of rain have already fallen. Additional rainfall amounts of 2 to 4 inches are possible in the warned area. Flash flooding is already occurring. Turn around, don't drown when encountering flooded roads. Most flood deaths occur in vehicles. Be aware of your surroundings.
Stay away from power lines too.
So that flash flood warning on top of 2 others that are in effect. One for Humacao County, Maunabo County, Naguabo County, Patias County, and Yabucoa County until 1:15, and a flash flood warning for St. Croix County. I assume that's just St. Croix in the Virgin Islands until 12:30 for similar amounts of flash flooding. So once again, a major situation ongoing with those flash flood warnings.
Oh, no. This is not good.
Looking back at the full picture at both of those storms right now, Typhoon Nanmadol and Tropical Storm Fiona. Let's see if we can take some questions.
You're cutting out, Nathan.
I don't know. I'm still here, but I've no idea.
It's cutting out for me like 3 to 4 times already.
Well, will Fiona become a major when moving out to sea? I think it will. National Hurricane Center don't currently forecast that, but maybe that will change in their next update. I don't think it will affect land as a major. And there's another one there. Is there any lightning in Fiona? Alright, good question. Let's go back. Yep.
Yeah. Let me check with the windy, because I have to showing lightning.
Let's go back to our dashboard here and we'll be able to show you lightning on our imagery too. And you might see little lightning sparks appear. Hold on.
There's one. Where is that?
Yes, there's lots of lightning down there, all those little yellow things there. Lightning down in the bands in the southeast, but not really in that big convective burst near the center. You'll notice a few red dots swirling around there as well. Those all correlate to potentially severe thunderstorms or high rain rates. We use that more in severe weather tracking, so it's not really something we look at so much here. Let's switch the radar back on and see what's new, if anything. So there's a
I
wide
got
shot of the entire thing. Yes.
I got one I'm not sure if I got one lightning strike near the center. Because on Windy it showed one, but I'm not sure if it did.
Yeah, there could be a stray one or two. Let's go back to some webcam shots right now and take a look at Joey's screen, showing us once again not much change there in the northeastern part of Federico. That area right now is right near some of the red zones on radar. But it's not showing much going on there. There's a steady wind, you can quite clearly see that, up to maybe 30 miles per hour there. We're not seeing anything too gusty. And the waves don't look too severe either, although noted that this is on the more protected northern side. We're covering both these systems live, Typhoon Nanmadol and Tropical Storm Fiona. Let's just show you once again the updated JTWC cone for Nanmadol and their latest estimate, having it down to 90 miles per hour, which is what our team went with earlier as well. The latest suggestion is that the pressure in Nanmadol, according to the JTWC, is around 963 millibars, although our team have it much lower at 945. It will remain large as it swirls round and swivels to the northeast, moving through the rest of the Japanese islands, weakening to a tropical storm in about 12 to 24 hours, and then shooting off northeastwards, leaving the eastern coast of Japan, and possibly still being tropical by that point, and turning post-tropical as it reaches the Kuril Islands. As for Fiona, there is the last forecast from the National Hurricane Center from 8 AM. We'll have an update at 11 AM, which is coming up real fast now. So whether it becomes a hurricane or not is the big question right now. And as soon as we know, you will know. I don't know whether they might wait for recon if they're still in the storm. So we'll just have to see. I'm just trying to see if there's more recon readings for myself, since we don't have anyone checking at the moment. As far as I can see, we have got... Ooh, it's very close. From what I'm reading here... Oh no, actually, that's only... Just a minute.
We'll have both. Yeah.
No, I don't think Recon's getting hurricane force winds yet. I've just looked at one or two of the charts that they've been producing, and they're still in the storm. I don't think they're going to go with a hurricane, even though the radar looks real nice, and the satellite imagery is certainly improving as well. You can see an eye feature taking shape. But actual observations trumps all, and if Recon haven't found hurricane force winds, then they're not going to go with a hurricane at the next update. But I guess they're still waiting around to see if that changes in the next few minutes before they do their update.
Okay.
So at this moment, let's see if there's any more questions to answer. It was just an answer about a question whether radar is down. Is it?
Wait, what?
You could be right, actually. We've not had a return there for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a possibility that radar might have gone down.
This is not good.
I'll do another check. I'll do my own research here and see if we've got any info. The last radar came out at 9:59. That's nearly an hour ago.
I think it's down.
So yeah, I reckon we've not had radar for nearly an hour, so that doesn't sound good.
Yep, that does not. I'm already getting shivers down my spine.
Who knows what might have caused that, whether it was weather related or not. I mean, it would be a little bit of a coincidence, wouldn't it? But well,
Yep.
we can only do so much. So we continue to wait for the next National Hurricane Center update, which will be quite telling for, I suppose, what happens for the rest of today, really.
Oh god.
Let's go back to the imagery without the radar overlay then, and see how much progress Fiona is making. When you look towards the center of the storm there and its motion, west-northwestwards, convection's firing up, not too badly at all. Let's zoom out. There's the whole picture of Fiona right now, and you can see that the eastern side is building in a little bit as well, with that western side starting off with that big convective burst, and then the northern side as well. Certainly a lot of rain being produced over Puerto Rico right now, with I imagine very high rain rates. Southeastern side also got those bands of strong thunderstorms as well, and those are likely to be the areas that you might see some potential tornadic activity. That might sweep round to the Virgin Islands later on, so I would keep a close watch out in that area. Now, we're always checking for the National Hurricane Center's update early, because quite often they do their updates very early, sometimes up to half an hour before the scheduled time. So it's always a big question mark as to whether the update will come out now or whether they'll wait right up until the top of the hour for any new recon data. At the moment, no word from the National Hurricane Center. We're waiting with bated breath as to whether they'll declare a hurricane. I'm thinking, from looking at that recon, they probably won't. And I doubt there'll be much changes in the watches and warnings at this update either.
Nathan?
Now, I've just seen a new radar frame saying it's unavailable, so certainly radar is not working right now in Puerto Rico.
This is not good.
So a bit of confirmation there. Now then, Ying sends us a message of support with a tired coffee cup, if I'm not mistaken, on there. That's an interesting sign to send us. So I'm hoping that this coverage is useful. And let's see what else we have right now. And a question as to whether Punta Cana is the right position to intercept the storm. I'm still not sure on that. I would say that Western Puerto Rico was probably the best place. I think they're going to get a Category 1 landfall, and I'm not sure Punta Cana will. It's on the western side of the storm as well, which would be the weaker side. So I would have big doubts on that, to be honest. Apparently National Hurricane Center has updated Madeline up to 45 miles per hour, staying at 45 miles per hour, I think it was, and a pressure of 998. Let me just try and confirm that. Yep, 45, 998. Their forecast for Madeline has a 50 mile per hour peak. and there are tropical storm watches in effect there. That's actually the first I knew about that. Manzanillo to Cabo Corrientes with a tropical storm warning, so it is going a little bit closer to land than they were expecting, and the storm's wind field might just touch the coast, but it's going to be a close one. We're still waiting for the National Hurricane Center's update, which will be key into potentially where our coverage goes next. If Fiona becomes a hurricane, then things will have been up to notch. But from what I've been seeing and interpreting so far, I don't think they will call it a hurricane yet. But who knows? We're all waiting to see what they say. If you've just joined us, this is Force 13 Live. We are covering Typhoon Nanmadol and Tropical Storm Fiona, both code red situations and major problems. For Japan, we could be seeing rain totals of over 20 inches, 500 millimeters, for large parts of the mountains of Kyushu, and over 250 millimeters for pretty much all of Kyushu and large parts of Shikoku and western Honshu. So extremely high amounts of rain for a broad area there in southwestern Japan, as well as powerful typhoon force winds. For Tropical Storm Fiona, even more rain could fall over parts of Puerto Rico, up to 25 inches there. Flash flood warnings are now in effect for a potential major flooding emergency in Puerto Rico over the next few hours. Likely to reach hurricane strength very shortly, Fiona, and could make landfall in the southwestern tip of Puerto Rico in around, I think, 3 or 4 hours, if I'm not mistaken with that timing. Let's try and get just a quick estimate on the distance from land. By my reckoning right now, it's about 60 kilometers offshore, which is just a little bit over 40 miles.
I got 36.
36?
Yep. Unless I'm wrong, probably.
Interesting call.
Yeah.
Quite close together. But we have now been slightly hindered and hamstrung by the radar disappearing. Looks like Puerto Rico radar has gone down for those who have just joined us. There are 312,000 power outages or customers out in Puerto Rico right now, at least the ones we know of. So the situation is escalating, probably expected, but nonetheless is still happening all the same. If you have any questions or comments for us, and indeed if you are in the vicinity of any of these storms and have information for us, local information from the ground, and if it's safe to do so, please let us know in the comments. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. So right now we're just waiting out for the National Hurricane Center's update, and after that I think we might break off our coverage and return to an automated stream and make a stream for Fiona, and we'll probably do a much longer extensive coverage in the evening for Fiona. So I think that's what we will do when we find the latest information from the National Hurricane Center, but certainly a lot going on right now. Just checking for any new warnings in Puerto Rico, local information. Nothing really, just that there's flash flood warnings for lots of counties, coastal flood warnings, and flood watches for large areas. St. Croix, indeed, is still under a flash flood warning as well until 12:30. So, National Hurricane Center taking their time on what they're going to do with Fiona. Let's see what the JMA make of Nanmadol right now. They're still going with 940 millibars, actually. and they still have the storm at 115 miles per hour, Category 3, which is fascinating. They expect it to still be a Category 2 in a few hours' time, so that is very interesting from the JMA, going much higher than the other agencies and our team. We are just sitting here waiting for the National Hurricane Center's update. Let's see if there's a comment there. Would the mountains in Puerto Rico weaken Fiona? I don't think very much. When people ask questions like that, I always think of Irene in 2011, which managed to intensify into a hurricane over the island. So, not necessarily. Every storm is different. Some of them might get a little bit impacted by it. If wind shear's on a marginal line, maybe it's just enough to tip to balance. So every story is different, I guess. And the update is out. They have called it a hurricane. Fiona has become a hurricane. That is the latest news. And they are giving it current winds of 80 miles per hour with gusts to 100 miles per hour right now. And they are calling for further strengthening now, and they're expecting a major hurricane by the end of the 5-day period. So with that, we're going to stay on the air, I think. So Hurricane Fiona strengthens, is now actually a hurricane. News about hurricane watches for the US Virgin Islands have been discontinued, and that is the only change in the warnings right now. Hurricane Fiona has winds of 80 miles per hour and is expected to swipe the western coast of Puerto Rico shortly, and will contain winds of probably 80 miles per hour. Wow. So
Did you say Hurricane Fiona?
Yep, that's the latest. We have a hurricane active.
Okay.
So we're going to change, and it might take a little while for us to change all of our titles, but we are doing nonetheless. Things going from bad to worse.
Yep.
And that is the news at this very moment. Fiona is now a hurricane. Category 1 with winds of 80 miles per hour. And they are expecting a Category 3 peak. And just a little pause there as we look at both of these systems right now. There will be a lot more to come throughout the course of this afternoon. We are going to take the decision to stay on the air. Let's see if the National Hurricane Center has put out their new cone yet.
Oh, forgot about that.
And not yet. We'll be waiting to see that one, and they will have it as a hurricane. Well then, we're going to take a short break here. Stay tuned for more coverage on Hurricane Fiona. Our coverage is going to be much more weighted towards that one now rather than Nanmadol, as time's getting very late over there in Japan, and I imagine a lot of people will be tuning out. Fiona is much more of a issue now for those watching, I would imagine. So keep it tuned here. We'll have more updates as the next few hours progress, as it approaches a hurricane landfall in Puerto Rico. We'll be back after this. live coverage will continue in a moment. You're watching Force 13 live streaming service. Code Red situation continues on two fronts, with Typhoon Nanmadol moving through the southern islands of Japan, and now Hurricane Fiona, which is about to reach Puerto Rico and has stunned a few of our team members when the National Hurricane Center upped it not just to 75 miles per hour, but to 80 miles per hour sustained winds and a pressure of 987. It is currently 50 miles south of Ponce, Puerto Rico, 130 kilometers per hour, moving west-northwest at 8, and a pressure of 987 millibars. Changes with the advisory. The hurricane watch for the US Virgin Islands was discontinued. All the other warnings and watches remain in effect. A hurricane warning for Puerto Rico, including Vieques and Culebra, and the coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Casedo to Cabo Francis Viejo. A hurricane watch for the north coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Francis Viejo westward to Puerto Plata. A tropical storm warning for the US and British Virgin Islands, the north coast of the Dominican Republic from Cabo Francis Viejo westward to Puerto Plata. And a tropical storm watch for the south coast of the Dominican Republic, west of Cabo Casedo to Barahona, the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the southeastern Bahamas, including the Acklins, Crooked Island, Long Key, the Anaguas, Mayaguana, and the Ragged Islands. Let's check out the latest National Hurricane Center forecast graphic, and let's take a look if they've updated it. They should have. There it is. So they're now taking it right along the coast of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. I hear from our team, and Jose in particular, who is with me right now, that they no longer expect a landfall on Puerto Rico if you follow the line of the cone.
It's a near miss.
A near miss, although the cone of course is there, and it could still make landfall or indeed move further west. Also note there now, the last 3 days of that forecast, they're expecting a major category 3 out of Fiona. So those M's now denote a major hurricane later on in the forecast track of Hurricane Fiona. It is also likely to get fairly close to Bermuda when it reaches major hurricane status on Thursday. So that's the latest on Fiona right now. We also have Nanmadol active, which is still a powerful Category 1 typhoon, weakening but still very deep and strong, and we'll be watching that one closely as well over in Japan. But as it's nighttime there now, most of our coverage will be on Fiona, and if you've got any comments or questions for us throughout this event, please send us a message. We're waiting for our computers to kick in with producing graphics so that the bottom bar updates. It will shortly, and we'll get to see Hurricane Fiona on that ticker. Not much has really changed in the grand scheme of things regarding advice and preparedness actions. Just that Fiona is strengthening, the winds are going to be a little bit stronger, and now we're looking at an area that could get hurricane force winds for certain, rather than a possibility that we were looking at earlier. Let's read out some of the hazards from the National Hurricane Center. Actually, before we do that, let's just start with some observations. A weather station at Las Marias, Puerto Rico, recently reported sustained winds of 62 miles per hour and a gust of 75. So you're seeing it on the ground as well. 100 km per hour sustained wind there with a gust to 120. Let's check the National Hurricane Center discussion and see maybe why they've gone with 80 miles per hour, which has struck some people as slightly strange apparently. So let's see. Observations from Air Force and NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft and Doppler velocities from the San Juan WSR-88D radar indicate that Fiona is strengthening and is now a hurricane. Aircraft and radar data support a current intensity of 70 knots. I disagree actually, but there we go. Satellite imagery shows an expanding upper level outflow pattern over the system. Fiona should be moving in an environment of moderate vertical wind shear over warm SSTs and within a fairly moist air mass for the next few days. The only obvious impediments to strengthening should be the interaction with the land masses of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola over the next day or so. The official forecast is above the previous one, but still a little below the model consensus. It appears likely that Fiona will become the first major hurricane of this Atlantic hurricane season in a few days. Although the movement has still been a little irregular based on recent aircraft center fixes, a smooth initial motion is still west-northwestward, or 285 degrees at 7 knots. There's been little change to the track forecast reasoning, Over the next few days, the hurricane should move along the western periphery of a mid-tropospheric anticyclone. Thereafter, Fiona is likely to turn north-northeastward and accelerate later in the forecast period as it comes under the influence of higher latitude westerlies. The official forecast is just a little bit to the left of and slightly slower than the previous NHC track during the first 12 to 24 hours and very close to it thereafter. This is very similar to the latest dynamical model consensus aid TVCA. So that's some information there on their reasoning. And just to remind you of the hazards, hurricane conditions are later today. Tropical storm conditions and are possible across the watch area in the Dominican Republic tonight and in the Turks and Caicos Islands and southeastern Bahamas by early Tuesday. Fiona is forecast to produce in the Leeward Islands an additional 2 inches of rainfall or less, in the British and US Virgin Islands 4 to 6 inches, maximums of 10 on St. Croix, Puerto Rico 12 to 16 inches with local maximums of 25, particularly across eastern and southern Puerto Rico. Northern and eastern Dominican Republic 4 to 8 inches with local maximums of 12, particularly along the northeast coast. The rest of the Dominican Republic and Haiti 1 to 3 inches, the Turks and Caicos 3 to 6 inches. Storm surge, we're expecting 1 to 3 feet on the southern coast of Puerto Rico and for Vieques and Culebra. Localized coastal flooding is also possible elsewhere in Puerto Rico. Storm surge will raise water levels by as much as 1 to 3 feet above normal tides along the immediate coast in areas of onshore winds. Swells generated by Fiona are affecting the Leeward Islands, the Northern Windward Islands, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, the northern coast of the northern coast of the Dominican Republic, the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the southeastern Bahamas. These conditions could cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions. Please consult products from your local weather office. So that is all of the latest information on Fiona, and look at that band now on the northern side of what is pretty much an eye wall. Really dark red hues there on the northern wall of this storm, looking very powerful indeed. Well, at this point I am now joined by Jose still, as I was earlier on. Tell us your thoughts on Fiona at this hour, and I think you were a little bit surprised as well with the hurricane declaration.
Yep, surprise. Well, like I mentioned about, I said that Fiona looks like it may not make a landfall in Puerto Rico, which that makes me a little bit better because we don't want like a hurricane like hitting Puerto Rico right now.
I mean, it still is. Being 1 mile off a landfall is still pretty much the same thing, though. But yeah, radar went down for a brief spell earlier. We've got it back, as you can see. Let's see if there's any new information about power outages. Yes, there is new information, and power outages are continuing to rise a lot. It is now up to 352,000 out at present. And in some places that is over 50% out. Lots of oranges and even some red colours moving over Puerto Rico now, so extremely heavy and high rain rates likely occurring. Back to our split screen just for a moment, and let's see if we can take another look at Fiona on the infrared channel here. And this is how it's been looking over the course of the last hour or so. That big burst of convection earlier, and now another one starting up towards the northwestern side of the eye. The eye area is starting to become a little bit clearer as well, although I should mention that the actual eye is to the west of that little spot that looks like an eye, if that makes sense. So Fiona's structure certainly getting quite a bit better. Look back at the wide shot, and this gives you a little bit of a feel as to the whole picture regarding not just Fiona, but you can see Madeline there on the left hand side as well. And when you look at Fiona's movement there, you can probably triangulate a west-northwestward movement, and it moving extremely close to the southwestern tip of Puerto Rico. Whether it actually makes landfall there or not is now coming under question. If it doesn't, it will still pass very close to the island, enough so that it really doesn't make much of a difference. Now let's see if there's any new information regarding local warnings in Puerto Rico. I don't think there's anything new. There are a few flash flood warnings out there, but as of right now there's no new information. The last warning that came in was an hour ago, when a flash flood warning was declared for Ibonito County, Arroyo, Cayey, Como, Guayama, Juana Diaz, Ponce, Salinas, Santa Isabel and Villalba counties until 2:15 p.m. Between 1 and 2 inches of rain have already fallen. Additional rainfall amounts of 2 to 4 inches are possible in the warned area. Flash flooding already occurring, we're told, in parts of Puerto Rico. I think the visible imagery is the most impressive of all when you look at the split screen once again, that wrapping round of that new convective cloud top, really showing Fiona off to be a intensifying hurricane, and quite impressive, although it looks to me as though the higher clouds aren't completely aligned with the actual eye just yet, as depicted on radar. And whilst we keep looking at that imagery, I'm just going to see if I can find any information regarding rain totals. Alright, let's see if we can check some rain totals here. I believe we can. Just hold on a minute here, I'm just trying to load up some information. This might take a while. In the meantime, we'll just keep looking at that radar imagery there. And rainfall has really been increasing. That's definitely plain to see. Alright, let's show this graphic, which I think is the best one that we can show. So this is a depiction of how much rain has been falling over the area. You can see the whole of Puerto Rico pretty much there. But it's the blues that we're really looking at. Let's just go to the latest frame. This is storm total precipitation so far. Let's take a look at some values. So over on Vieques, 4 inches in 1 or 2 locations. Near the radar site, 4 or maybe even 5 inches. Down here along the coast, near Guayama, 5, maybe pushing 6 inches now. Near Monabo, around 4 inches in that area. A little bit further north, much less numbers. In San Juan, maybe around 1 inch in 1 or 2 locations. And towards Santa Isabel, those numbers are going to go up pretty soon as well. But in those blue areas, that's around 3 inches or higher. The very dark, well, pretty much black, you're looking at 5 inches. And look at those little areas out to sea. Some of those oceanic places, 7 inches have fallen, 8 inches there actually, and that could easily transfer over land very shortly. So that's one that I wanted to show you there with regards to the rainfall estimates. Back to the latest radar imagery, and there is the eye of Hurricane Fiona. And this is now our main topic. Typhoon Nanmadol, of course, also a major issue, but considering it is now the middle of the night in Japan, we will focus most of our attention on Fiona. So, looking towards the center of that radar right now, and suggestions of the eye, the center of the eye probably being about 59 kilometers from land and closing in slowly. Let's see if we can take some questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text and we'll be able to respond. If you've got any observations on the ground, we'd love to hear from you if it's safe to do so. Let's start with a few here. Jack Huston says it's gone up 20 mile an hour in wind speeds in 6 hours. Would this constitute rapid intensification? I'm not sure. I think it certainly has to go on for longer. How far is Hurricane Fiona to landfall? I saw earlier it was suggested it would be about 2 p.m. local time.
I'll take a look. Wait, what?
That's what I saw earlier from the NHC.
It's got 40 for some reason.
Another comment, do you think Fiona wind gusts could reach the East Coast? Also, hello again. Hello. East Coast of the United States should and probably will escape anything from Fiona. Looking for some more. Rapid intensification possible, question mark? Absolutely. More likely after it clears Federico though. But even now it can't be ruled out. Can strong hurricane wind ricochet off of buildings? That's an interesting question. The wind can't, but I guess loose objects could. But wind tries to find its way through a building, really. So wind doesn't really bounce. It's like water, really, I guess. If a water hits say a little block, it will flow round the sides both ways, and wind will do that as well. And of course, structures that are more, and you see this with aerodynamics in vehicles and all that, buildings that are taller and larger, and they cause more wind resistance and so are much more vulnerable to being impacted. Now then, let's take a look. Well, I'm just switching back to my screen, looking at that radar that you've been looking at for a while, and certainly signs that we've been watching all the while whilst we've been here, that this storm has been strengthening since we first came on the air 2.5 hours ago, and is likely to draw closer to, I think it still will make landfall, but it's going to be mighty close. In fact, we can probably show on our overlay here the National Hurricane Center's cone, just to see if we can look at how close that cone is to land, or the track. There's the best track, and now the forecast line. Alright, there it is. Let's just get everything else off for a minute, the radar and whatnot, and the satellite. So there is the forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center, and you see it takes it right out over there. But in the meantime, very close. Oh dear, I've gone a bit too far there. Right, so the line there, there's the first line, and it takes it extremely close to making landfall there in southwestern Puerto Rico, and again close to a landfall in Hispaniola. And of course you've got to watch the cone. The storm could quite easily, press the wrong button there, I don't know what I did, could quite easily still deviate that way, make a landfall here, could still make a landfall anywhere along there. Of course it could still shake itself westwards. I think that's less likely, and that would mean a Dominican Republic landfall. But at the moment, if the National Hurricane Center is right with that straight track, no landfall would be the answer. and it would also miss the Turks and Caicos Islands, passing quite a bit way to the east there. And then the next potential landfall point, of course, would be Bermuda. Very small on our map there, but it's in the circle. And if that happens, NHC, if the NHC forecast verifies, that is a Category 3 going past there. So quite a concern, with a wind field probably going to be quite large by that point. So Bermuda would certainly get something. So that's just a little depiction of what we're looking at in the future. But right now, if you've just joined us, we are dealing with a double code red situation with 2 major storms active, but Fiona starting to take a bit more of the limelight at this point, now becoming a Category 1 hurricane with winds of 80 miles per hour sustained and a pressure estimate of 987 millibars. A very impressive northern eye wall now materializing. Just a big bank of red there. Really impressive, actually. And that's just edging closer and closer to the coast of Puerto Rico, and that would really be slamming you there, probably with hurricane force winds when it moves over land. Quite a thin band, but it's certainly got a lot of power in it there. Some dark reds. That must only be about 10 miles offshore. Once again, there are those 2 storms active right now. Typhoon Nanmadol, which made landfall in Japan earlier as a Category 2 after it reached a Category 5 peak some days ago. And obviously Hurricane Fiona, which gets even more interesting on visible satellite pictures. It is definitely strengthening at this time. Okay, our team, our analyst team, is going along with that estimate as well for Fiona. 80 miles per hour and a pressure of 987. Some questions. Is Hurricane Fiona going to do an eyewall replacement cycle? Now, steady on, it's not even started yet, so I think it will take a while before that happens. Chadwick just sent a message there saying electricity is out in Mayagüez. And Louis Avery says, what would you say if the next update said Fiona was a Category 5? Well, that's not going to happen. So I'm not really sure what the point in that question is, if I'm being honest. Whether it gets to Category 5 at any point in its life, even that's a tall order, because it is extremely rare to see Category 5 storms in the open Atlantic, and it would have to be there. So, no, it's not going to get there. But it is going to look impressive, and I think it's got a decent chance of getting to major hurricane status when it moves into the western Atlantic. Let's go back once again to the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone, and that's what they went with at the 11 AM advisory. If you're looking at it for the first time, they're calling for gradual strengthening and eventually becoming a major hurricane as it moves away from the Turks and Caicos Islands and heads towards Bermuda. In the immediate cone, in that 3-day period though, quite a lot of areas that could be exposed to hurricane force winds. We are most concerned about western Puerto Rico and eastern Dominican Republic. In terms of the rain, we are most concerned about eastern Puerto Rico and along the south coast as well, which could receive 20 inches of rain or higher. That's over 500 millimeters.
Nathan, can I just add on?
Yep.
Since Fiona is going to be moving away, I say rip currents can be a thing right now in the east coast of the United States.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, people always seem to underestimate the impacts along the US East Coast from hurricanes. Even when they're far away, rip currents can be a severe problem and can take lives. They're not mentioning it yet, though, on their key messages, and that's what we have on the screen here. Let's just go through some of these again. Hurricane conditions are expected across portions of Puerto Rico today and in portions of the Dominican Republic tonight and Monday. Tropical storm conditions are occurring across the US and British Virgin Islands and will reach the Dominican Republic later today and tonight. Heavy rains from Fiona will continue across Puerto Rico through tonight and occur over the Dominican Republic later today into Monday. These rainfall amounts will produce life-threatening flash floods and urban flooding across Puerto Rico and portions of the eastern Dominican Republic, along with mudslides and landslides in areas of higher terrain. Fiona is forecast to continue to strengthen after moving away from Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Tropical storm conditions are possible in the Turks and Caicos Islands and the southeastern Bahamas by late Monday or early Tuesday.
That is a lot.
It sure is. Alright, so some more comments here. One about, will Nanmadol manage to make landfall before it loses the majority of its cyclone? Well, it's inland, I have to mention that. Nanmadol has been inland for a few hours now. We'll just take a brief look at it in the close-up view when it loads. Still at 90 miles per hour and a pressure of 945 millibars according to our latest estimates. JTWC also going with 90 miles per hour and around a pressure of 963, I think it was. And the JMA still going with 115 miles per hour and a pressure of 940. On this imagery you can see the storm with some deep cloud tops still really moving across Kyushu. Very high rain rates I would expect in there right now, and I would be extremely concerned for flooding impacts. Winds are starting to degrade. It will no longer be a typhoon in about 12 hours, and then it will continue to shoot off towards the northeast through Japan.
Tropical storm force. Nathan. By the way, tropical storm force winds will reach Bermuda by Thursday.
That is what we're expecting at this time. Louis says, what do we think is in store for Punta Cana? That's on the east coast of the Dominican Republic, and it's going to be very close for them. I don't know what to suggest just yet. I think Punta Cana will be riding a very fine line, as will the entire north coast of the Dominican Republic. Hurricane force winds will probably occur, but maybe not for very long. As for rainfall, I think you could be looking at up to be honest, I'm speculating really, but maybe up to about isolated maximums of 8 inches. I think that's what the NHC said actually. But right now, when you look at the radar, there's not too much going on in that area. It's all for Puerto Rico at the moment. Looking at that radar again, the eye looking very fascinating, although maybe once again it's not closed. It made a real run earlier, it was looking very good. And even though that northern band is still extremely powerful, which it is, and is about to slam into the coast now, the southern side is looking a little bit bare. Well, not a little, completely bare. So, and the way that inner western band there was curving inwards at the end there still doesn't look like a closed eye, but a very powerful eye wall for more than half of the circumference. But it's got plenty of chance to do so. But the more I look at that, the more I gauge that the centre of the storm must be somewhere around here, And just at this present moment, it looks like movement is probably northwestward, at least a jog northwestward. Now, if it turns back that way, I guess it could still miss Puerto Rico. But at the moment, I'm thinking it could still make landfall. It's just my thought on that. We'll have to see. It's going to be close.
Yep.
Regardless of an actual landfall, which is just symbolic nonsense at times, if you ask me, if this storm doesn't make landfall by 1 mile and stays offshore, then you're still going to receive the worst conditions along most parts of Puerto Rico. It doesn't make a jot of difference as to whether we proclaim this big landfall sign as if that makes the storm 10 times worse. It actually would still be just as bad if it doesn't make a landfall.
For Trackman, he was asking for, is Mandel gonna make landfall?
What a great name, Trash Bin.
Yeah.
So, Tropical Storm Madeline will not make landfall, but they have issued tropical storm watches for it, and as such, tropical storm force winds may just about graze the coast of Mexico. So I think they've made a big precautionary measure there about whether they'll receive tropical storm force winds, and have just gone for a tropical storm watch. And that's for Manzanillo to Cabo Corrientes. Let's see what else we have now. Sam says, do you think Fiona will go to sea and keep away from land? Well, I would say at this point that's impossible.
I was just gonna say that, what you just said.
If you follow the NHC cone, it will avoid landfall, but that doesn't mean that it will avoid land. Big differences. It is already over Puerto Rico. Tropical storm conditions will be experienced all across Puerto Rico right now. And the hurricane force conditions are probably just a few miles offshore with that big band that's just about to reach land. Here it is once again, and you can see it now. That big red band about to really whip the coast of Puerto Rico. Just that tiny island offshore there that I can see. That's just about to get the band. So I don't know if that's an inhabited island or not. I don't think it is, but that will be the first place that will probably receive hurricane force winds, or at least extremely torrential rain. Two very small islands just off Santa Isabel.
Just to say that even though, well, we don't actually know, well, probably, if Fiona does not make landfall, just know that it's still going to receive hurricane force winds and tropical storm force winds.
Caja de Muertos, the island, Coffin Island apparently, is the first place that will receive that big red band and is just about inside it already. So that's the main thing that we're looking at right now, and the main bit of news that we've had. Very interesting to see just that little inner part of the eye there, just sort of being magnetized towards the center of the eye. It's that little blob on radar. Very odd.
There's a little hook.
So as it gets stronger, and it is getting stronger at the moment, we are quite concerned. There could even be a little bit more strengthening before it makes landfall in Puerto Rico. We are expecting the landfall time, I think, is still going to be around 3 hours from now. Let me just do a double check on what they're saying. In the meantime, keep looking at that radar imagery. And we expect that by... Oh, actually, no, slower now.
It's slowing down?
Yeah, they're expecting a much slower track now. So it's not going to be in 3 hours, it's going to be much longer than that. they're expecting landfall. Well, not landfall now, but closest point to land. They're expecting that at about 8 p.m. local time.
Yeah.
Which is a long way from now. That is still 9 hours away.
Yep.
So, with that in mind, that just increases the concern really for a big flooding event in Puerto Rico. That's all I can really say at the moment.
If I don't know, I don't know if some people in the live chat right now, go, if your house is getting flooded, please go to higher ground. If you do have a higher ground, please go to it, but please just stay away from any debris that can be floating.
We're just waiting for our connection to come back. All right, here we are. No, I guess not. I don't know what's happening to the connection, but sometimes it does this. I don't know why. So, just want to read out some more information about potential impacts once again from the latest statement from the local National Weather Service office in San Juan. Potential impacts from the flooding rain are still unfolding across the region. Remain well guarded against life-threatening floodwaters and having possible devastating impacts. If realized, these impacts include extreme rainfall flooding, which may prompt numerous evacuations and rescues. Rivers and tributaries may overwhelmingly overflow their banks in many places with deep-moving water. Small streams, creeks, canals, arroyos, and ditches may become raging rivers. In mountain areas, deadly runoff may rage down valleys while increasing susceptibility to rock slides and mudslides. Flood control systems and barriers may become stressed. Floodwaters can enter numerous structures within multiple communities, some structures becoming uninhabitable or washed away. Numerous places where floodwaters may cover escape routes. Streets and parking lots become rivers of raging water with underpasses submerged. Driving conditions become very dangerous. Numerous road and bridge closures with some weakened or washed out. Protect against life-threatening wind having extensive impacts across Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. Considerable roof damage to sturdy buildings, with some having window, door, and garage door failures leading to structural damage. Mobile homes severely damaged, with some destroyed. Damage accentuated by airborne projectiles. Locations may be uninhabitable for weeks. Many large trees snapped or uprooted along with fences and roadway signs blown over. Some roads impassable from large debris, and more within urban or heavily wooded places. Several bridges, causeways, and access routes impassable, and large areas with power and communications outages, as we've already seen. Over 350,000 now without power. Potential impacts from the main surge event are now unfolding across southern and southeastern Puerto Rico. Remain well away from locally hazardous surge having limited impacts. If realized, these impacts include localized inundation with storm surge flooding mainly along immediate shorelines and in low-lying spots, or in areas farther inland near where higher surge waters move ashore. Sections of near-shore roads and parking lots become overspread with surge water, driving conditions dangerous in places where surge water covers the road. Moderate beach erosion, heavy surf also breaching dunes, mainly in usually vulnerable locations, and strong rip currents. Minor to locally moderate damage to marinas, docks, boardwalks, and piers, a few small craft broken away from moorings. And the occurrence of isolated tornadoes are possible, which could hinder the execution of emergency plans during tropical events. A few places may experience tornado damage along with power and communications disruptions, and locations could realize roofs peeled off buildings, chimneys toppled, mobile homes pushed off foundations or overturned. Do not return to evacuated areas until hazardous winds diminish and floodwaters abate. Now is the time to remain safely sheltered from the storm, stay inside and away from windows, listen for updates and be ready in case you lose electrical power. Locate your battery-powered radio and flashlight from your emergency supplies kit and keep these items close. Lots of information on there on the San Juan Weather Office at the National Weather Service about this storm. To reiterate some of the other warnings that are going on in Puerto Rico right now, in fact there's a new flood watch that has been issued, or perhaps a reissuance of a very large area. I imagine it's the whole of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Flash flooding caused by excessive rainfall continues to be possible through Monday afternoon. Life-threatening to catastrophic flooding is expected. Periods of moderate to heavy rainfall. The heaviest rainfall is expected for today through Monday. Rainfall totals of 5 to 10 inches expected for much of the region, including the US Virgin Islands, with locally higher amounts. In southern Puerto Rico, however, rainfall amounts of 12 to 16 inches are anticipated, and locally higher amounts of 20 to 25 inches are possible as well. Dangerous conditions. Coastal flood warning remains in effect until 6 a.m. on Monday. 1 to 3 feet of surge, heavy surf and beach erosion. And in terms of flash flooding, the last flash flood warning was issued at 10:13 for Ibanito, Arroyo, Cayey, Coamo, Guayama, Juana Diaz, Ponce, Salinas, Santa Isabel and Villalba counties in Puerto Rico until 2:15 p.m. They're expecting an additional 2 to 4 inches of rain between now and 2:15 p.m. I think. So very dangerous flooding concerns continue as we greet the return of Joey.
Hello, I am back. What have I missed?
Well, Fiona became a hurricane.
Oh, 75 miles an hour?
80 miles per hour.
Oh.
Yep.
Indeed, it was quite a surprise to the weather community, I gathered, with them going at 80 miles per hour based on a blend of recon data and radar return information. So I wonder whether you concur.
Well, I would have thought they would have gone 75 miles an hour, but clearly whilst I was gone, some more information from recon came through. So the National Hurricane Center must have had good reasoning to go with that intensity.
We have a few more comments here. Whether Fiona will interact with a cold front further during its movement?
Whether that means undergo extra tropical transition,
I've no idea what that is in reference to be honest.
or if that means that it will bump into a cold front and get swallowed up.
To me, I think he means emerge with a cold front.
I don't know.
Possibly when it gets further north in the Atlantic. By further north, I mean further north than Bermuda. There is that possibility, but it's way too far out to tell how it will mise itself.
Back to our dual panel, and Fiona's looking pretty great on that imagery there on the visible. Nanmadol is on its way out, but still a extremely dangerous storm that we are still on code red for. We will probably break off our coverage now at the end of this hour, and then we will recuperate for a while, and we'll probably do another live event in the evening hours when this storm is probably reaching its closest point to landfall by then. But in the meantime, we'll just complete this hour and talk about Fiona a little bit more. And there was another question about two questions actually. When hurricane force conditions are expected to reach Punta Cana? Interesting question. And I expect it would be probably in the early hours into the morning hours tomorrow. From what I gather.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I forgot the other one. Oh, whether it would hit Puerto Rico as a Category 2. I mean, it's already reached Category 1. It's strengthening. It clearly is strengthening on the imagery.
I haven't had a chance to take a look.
But if you ask me, I think it's gonna... it won't get the Category 2. Until after Puerto Rico.
It does look very good on imagery. Is that an eye trying to...
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Oh.
Really mighty on radar though, Joey, if you've not seen it yet. A big red band on the northern side, really about to smack into the southern coast there. So all who are watching in that area, and I know there's a few that mentioned themselves in the comments just now, really about to get struck there by the most intense part, or the strongest part of the storm, quite possibly, in a matter of minutes, so you better hunker down.
Isabel, Ponce, sort of those areas on the southern coast.
Yep. Very strong radar returns there. But Joey, I'm wondering what's happening with the inner part of the eye there. You see on the radar little bits of the western eye wall flaking off and just ending up in the center there. In fact, that actually now looks like a mesovortice or two.
That's what I was thinking. When I came back and looked at this. Yeah, very interesting to look at. I would agree with you. It does look like we have a few mesovortices in there.
Fascinating. And those are literally little circulations within the eye.
If I look at this radar thing setting, yeah, it does look like those are mesovortices.
Fascinating.
Indeed.
So, once again, Fiona is a very dangerous storm, particularly for this region when we look at, I mean, well, we're talking about 25 inches of rain. I mean, that is high by anyone's standards, but in this area that can be particularly dangerous, can't it, Joey?
Yeah, indeed, and let's not forget the risks that come with that. Obviously, severe landslides are expected, major flash flooding, all along with the wind that is expected as well, and especially on that south coast where we could see some storm surge. So add in that coastal flooding, it's just going to be a lot of water piling on top of each other.
Up to 3 feet of storm surge as well along that southern coastline there, so that is definitely something that could be of concern, especially if you're in a coastal area. Let's see if we have some more questions. In fact, I think there's been quite a lot. People are challenging us to do a 24-hour continuous live stream. If you do that, I'll give you a lot of money, apparently. I mean, that's not really what we're here for. We'd love to do 24-hour coverages, though. We'd love to do 24-hour commentary. We don't really have the manpower at the moment, but we would love to, because we want to do as much. We always want to do as much coverage as possible, of course, but we can't at the minute. So we have to try and pick our times wisely to do our coverage, and that's why we're going to be finishing up shortly, so we can take a few hours break and then come back later. In the peak hours of the evening in Puerto Rico and cover it more closely and hopefully do our best coverage. So yeah, it's... Oh, let's see, there's more comments here. Projection, apparently projection for the cost of Nanmadol. Well, no idea, it will run into the billions, no doubt. They usually do. Have we ever seen a storm like this, and to which storm can Fiona be compared? I think sort of an easy one to compare it to would be Irene in 2011, although it's done it a little bit faster than that. And of course it will move further east than Irene. It's further on than Dorian was at this point in its life. Of course it's going nowhere near that either. So after that, I struggle to think of modern or recent examples that have hit Puerto Rico, but I will have a look, because I have some great historical tools to find a decent comparison, and I'm sure there will be some. So it might be long ago, but I'm sure we will have a comparison to look at. Let's see. Category 1 landfalls in Puerto Rico. There's a good one. This is to the letter, actually, almost. Hortense of 1996. A very, very good analogue. A tropical storm that moved through Guadeloupe and then made a hurricane landfall in southwestern Puerto Rico, moved through the Mona Passage off the northern coast of Dominican Republic, past the Turks and Caicos as a Category 2, peaked as a Category 4, passed west of Bermuda as a weakening Category 2, and then hit Nova Scotia. Now, the end part won't happen, but the rest of it is very likely. So I would say that Hortense is probably going to be the best analogue you'll ever find on this one.
I also see that the National Hurricane Center are now forecasting this to become a major.
Yes, indeed.
And that is very, very close to Bermuda as well.
Pretty close.
And I would say that Irene is actually the second best analogue, despite how different it is.
So a very unique system, it looks.
Slightly. I mean, it is literally Hortense Part 2.
Yeah.
I mean, that storm 26 years ago now. And as Joey mentioned there, we're looking once again at the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone, calling for that major hurricane period by the time we get to day 3, 4, and 5. It could happen sooner than that, or, given how the Atlantic has been this year, maybe it will fail. We expected Earl to become a major hurricane, but it did not. But I think there is considerable, a higher chance that this one will get there than Earl had. Let's see if we can take a few more comments. We will finish up shortly for the time being. I'm just looking at some more comments here. Could Fiona reach Category 4 at its peak? I think it certainly could. What intensity do you think it will be by the time it passes by Puerto Rico? I think it will get a little bit stronger. My guess, educated guess, I think, Joey, 90 miles per hour when it makes its closest pass or landfall. It's just my thought at this point.
Yeah, there's definitely scope for that. I'd probably agree with you, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nathan.
It doesn't strike me as a storm that's going to rapidly intensify.
Yeah, no,
Yet.
it's on a gradual intensification phase at this moment. And I don't think it will begin rapidly intensifying at any point close to Puerto Rico. Let's hope.
Let's have a final look at your webcam, Joey, and not really much has changed there. The radar in that area suggests that it's quite bad inland with some very heavy rainfall, but actually in this particular area it's probably going to stay like this now.
Yeah, it's a shame we can't get any other webcams closer to the south coast or more inland. This is the best, well, not best, but it is one of the only ones that I could have found. I could look for one in the more central part of the country or the territory. But,
That's alright.
Yeah.
But you've not noticed anything changing there? Is the
No.
looks like the tide's in a little though.
Yeah, that's the only change. When it comes to winds, I've noticed that the gusts are a tad bit stronger, and that's it.
Pretty much what you would expect there. For most of the island of Puerto Rico, it is going to be rainfall that is the massive factor in this one. I'm afraid to see how impactful that rainfall might be. 25 inches for Puerto Rico. We know how bad things can be in storms there. Recent impacts from Hurricane Maria, of course, that was much worse regarding the wind. But obviously Puerto Rico is vulnerable due to past events, and the infrastructure. We already know of over 350,000 power outages. It's going to be messy. If it isn't devastating, it's going to be messy at least. And with that, that's pretty much everything that we're going to be here for right now. We're going to finish up here for a while. Nanmadol moving inland over Kyushu. It's actually about to enter Honshu in a couple of hours, it would seem, starting to move eastward. Hurricane Fiona intensifying and is probably going to become the top story now as Nanmadol fades away slowly but surely. We'll have more updates on Fiona later on. We will probably start an automated stream on it as well on the Force 13 channel, so subscribe if you haven't already, and eventually you'll see that pop up in your notifications, as you will with any of our other updates as well. If you liked our coverage, please consider supporting us in any way you can, even if that is by offering your abilities to join our team. We're always looking for people to help out with our coverage. In the meantime, that's all from us. We'll be back in the evening. Stay safe, turn around, don't drown. That's always the big advice that we give, but to be honest, you should be staying indoors, period, regarding Puerto Rico's rainfall estimates, unless you are evacuated, because I imagine they'll be taking no chances with this one. We'll be back again soon. Thanks to my team for joining me, and we will return whenever we're ready, I guess. Fiona strengthening, already reaching hurricane status and likely to strengthen further, and that's it from us.